Hey, this is Matt Dale and Christopher DeFilippis with the Quantum Leap podcast, and we're here today with Chris Grismer. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Chris, I think a lot of people will recognise from seeing in the opening credits, amongst a long list of executive producers, there's a whole team of producers on the show, but we know, we've heard you referred to by Dean and others as the directing producer, so we know there's something a little bit different about what you do compared to the rest of the executive team there. So perhaps we could just start by asking simply, what is it you do on the show? What's your part?
Yeah, technically I'm the directing producer on the show, so the directing producer kind of oversees the directors. With Martin, we hire the directors. The show with Martin and Dean, we hire the directors, and then I kind of make sure that we have a solid look for the season, that we have similar language being spoken, especially in HQ. And also I'm there to inspire the directors, to kind of push them to find their voice, and we want each story to be unique, so we sort of push them in that direction. Also, we kind of the directing producer does a bit of pre-production that the directors wouldn't be there for, like finding initial locations, so we can streamline their experience once they arrive.
So you had said you are charged with giving the season a solid look. Can you explain
not
what that
necessarily.
means?
It's more like what our show is different than other shows because a lot of shows, they have a certain language that they want spoken with every episode, and there's things you don't do. Sometimes you arrive and the producing director tells you, we don't do shots like that. We don't do shots like that. This is our color palette, etc. Where our show is very different because each episode is its own little movie. It's a new leap. It's a new unique story. So we want the directors to find inspiration in that and create a unique look for the show and come up with a new language almost every episode. So it's a lot of fun that way, and it's a little different in that we're not telling people not to do things. We're encouraging them to find those things within the story.
So when you are doing this, I assume that you have to, when you're getting directors, if you can talk about that process, that's always fascinated me, because when you have a rotating crew of directors, are there some that you try to work with more than others, or how do these names get chosen? How do you get these people to do these episodes?
Everyone has a list. The studio, the network, Martin, Dean, myself, we all have people we really like and that we've worked with before. And then slowly those lists get whittled down. Some people have that person didn't do a great job for us here, or we're not fans, or we're giant fans of them. And then the names sort of float to the surface that everybody likes, and then you try them out. And then when they hit it out of the park, which has generally happened for us, then we try to have them back.
You've talked a little bit about what you currently do for the show. Maybe I can now ask you to go back to the start and ask how you got involved in the show to start with. What's your history with Martin and Dean?
I don't have much of a history with Martin and Dean. I knew Martin's name and Dean's name before I started on the show. The original showrunners, Brian and Steven, on the show, I did a show with them years ago. One of my first directing gigs, especially in the sci-fi realm, was a show called Kyle XY that I did for them. And so we'd remained in touch, and I was one of a few candidates that came forward for the directing producer position and interviewed and pitched out my ideas, and then they brought me on to sort of produce the first pilot and then continue from there. The second pilot, not the first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The first pilot became my episode 6 that I directed.
Right, so I think we're both really curious about the process that went into episode 6, considering that you had to, I guess, you used some footage that had already been produced, and then you had to put it all together with just this glorious mashup of stuff to make this episode. We're so curious to know what went into getting that, because it looked great in the end. Yeah,
well, I think Martin and Dean in the writer's room did a great job of taking what they had and going and finding a new story and finding then we looked at what footage we had and where we could fill in the holes and how to cover that. Like, we need a close-up of this person with this background to make this work. I think we ended up using 18 minutes of original footage from the first episode, and then the rest was all shot on the backlot and around the backlot.
And as well as that, kind of the technical aspect of putting that all together and the writing aspect, did you find that you were leaning more into, okay, well, this is what Helen Shaver did, this was her style, I need to do something that complements that, and maybe going in a different direction than you would have been naturally inclined to?
To some extent. I mean, mostly the color palette, we had to stick with that, and how it was lit. We wanted it to not be jarring. But we also had a new language for the show by that point, in terms of our close-ups and our movement and character movement. So we did, we took what we could from her pilot, and then we sort of brought in the new look of the show and made the two fit together.
One thing that we as fans really geeked out over was the introduction of yet another hand link. And we were happy to see that prop. So, I mean, when you talk about like the look of the show, and you see how I think What a Disaster and that original pilot did look somewhat different. What were the things that you were conscious of, like props, like that hand link, or is that what you mean when you say like establishing the language?
The language is more like in terms of camera. For me, it was in terms of the camera movement. Like, when's the camera moving? How much of the character's moving while they're speaking? How that's sort of the language of the show. And also in terms of the framing, our framing was much different than the new framing is much different than the original framing of the first pilot. But in terms of the hand links and things like that, no, I think that no one was happy with that original hand link design. Truthfully, I've done a few sci-fi shows, and that is every time someone designs something that's a communication device that's supposed to be in the future, they always look exactly like that. And so I think everyone was happy to see that one go, and is much happier with the new design, which was a lot of fun to be a part of designing that. So, yeah, when we did Killjoys, I did the show Killjoys, sci-fi show, and we had designed all these things, and every prototype comes in and looks exactly like that. So.
And here I thought it was a little bit reminiscent of the original series hand link, because at least it had some colors in it. You guys went in a completely different direction with the hockey puck. We call it the hockey puck hand link on the
hockey puck. Well, it's got some turquoise and some green, and and colors come out of it.
Yeah. But that nice little circular shape, it's got a uniqueness to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So perhaps we could talk a little bit about, you had this role looking after the whole of season 1 and season 2, and we really want to get on to talking about season 2 for sure. I'm trying to hold back. But during season 1, you also had your own episodes that you were assigned to direct, or I guess you assigned yourself to direct. How did you get those particular gigs?
Well, that's really Martin and Dean. Once we have the directors that we want to use, Martin and Dean kind of look at people's... They know what's coming better than I do in the writer's room, because I just have to wait for them to tell me what's coming. But they'll look at the director's strong suits and, this person, like Pamela, is an unbelievable director for Leap, Die, Repeat. She'd be great with the meticulous nature of this. So, those sort of assignments come from them, and they assigned me. I was lucky enough to get assigned the ones I was assigned. So, and usually the directing producer will take the ones that are like mid-season finales and things that might need extra time that you wouldn't have, because a lot of directors they're just there for 8 days before 8 prep days. And it's not enough time sometimes to prep a big finale or prep a show that travels, or, anything that requires extra time and care usually goes to the directing producer on the show.
Well, maybe for the benefit of the audience listening, we can run down the episodes that you did direct in season 1. You had O Ye of Little Faith. You had the aforementioned What a Disaster. You had S.O.S, the one with Brandon Routh, one of my favorites. I got to talk to Superman, thanks to you. And Judgment Day, the finale. So, I guess that's where, like you said, when it comes in, the more important episodes, they're going to get you for, say, like a Judgment Day. And I remember back to the original series when Don Belisario used to direct all of the finales and the opens most times. So
Yeah.
I can now kind of see the inner workings of that.
Yeah, it's just it's really, it's not necessarily they're assigning them to me because they're more important. It just honestly is because sometimes it's because either the vibe fits me properly, or it's because it's going to require like 2 weeks extra prep. And honestly, it comes down to the fact that you don't have to pay me for those extra 2 weeks of prep. You'd have to pay a director to come in. So
I imagine S.O.S. particularly would have been quite prep heavy. Would that be a correct assumption? Oh, okay, all right. Yeah.
very prep heavy.
The look on your face.
Yeah,
says it all.
no, it was amazing, and I loved doing that episode. And the initial sort of journeys to the boat with Dean and with Alex, we just kind of go and wander around, and what about something here, and what about something here, and this works, and maybe we build this. And there's this guy at the boat who was the electrician, I think, in the 70s on the ship, like when he was still in the Navy, and he works there still. And so one day I just was touring the ship looking at interesting places to shoot, and he pulls out this keyring. He goes, "You want to see some stuff that no one's allowed to see?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So you get to go and see all these old weird rooms full of equipment that's still functioning. It was really interesting.
Was there a part of you while you were doing that thinking, "Oh, I'd love to shoot here. This would be so much fun. Look at the angles, the lighting."
Yeah, some of it is perfect, but their combat rooms are very, very small. So definitely the part of me that is going to be on set for those 12 hours was like, let's build this. Let's build something that looks a lot like this, but is on a very roomy stage.
I guess that makes sense. What I really like about this new iteration of the show is the fact that Ben can leap beyond his own lifetime. And as a result, we've had leaps far back. I think they're going to the Salem Witch Trials in season 2. But sticking with season 1, you directed, I think, Ben's furthest leap back yet that we've seen on screen, which was O Ye of Little Faith. So when you're approaching that 30s style, do you bring a different mentality to it? Like I guess the broader question is, when you see the episodes that you get, do the time periods influence the way you approach the look?
The time period, definitely, and the genre, and the way that time period has been expressed in cinema previously, all sort of influenced how I wanted to capture that one. And truthfully, a big part of the influence for that one was I just had to find a house to shoot in on the lot that could work as that house. And the ones that were presented to me were that were shootable. There's not a lot, like you think that big lot like Universal, they're going to have a ton of houses that you can shoot inside. And there's a few, but they're generally finished on the outside for big street scenes, but there are not a lot of them that are finished on the inside. And so I was looking around, and there was one that, the one that we ended up shooting in was considered unsafe, and it wasn't really finished inside. And they shot Best Little Whorehouse in Texas in it. And when we walked in, I was like, let's just look in there. We went in and looked. Our amazing location managers, like Dan, was like, let's just take a peek. And it was just perfect. And I was like, if Universal can make this safe for us, because we can't afford to do that, then we can shoot in here. And that house sort of spoke to the language of how we wanted to capture it. As soon as we had that and that huge stairwell, and everything just kind of it feels like my parents' house in Toronto, truthfully. It feels like kind of semi-haunted, Irish family just moved and has everything sort of stuffed into the walls. So it felt, it sort of created the language for us, helped create the language for us.
So that episode, the exteriors were the same house?
Yeah. Yeah, the exterior was...
So you guys shot
right.
outside and in?
Yeah, we did. But if you step on you can't look from the deck like we did. We had to go shoot that. Like, over their backs was a different location. And looking at them, because it's right on the road there, so you can't really look out from it.
So moving on from O Ye of Little Faith, I know you complimented Pamela's excellent work on Leap, Die, Repeat, and you said that kind of meticulous style was perfect for her. meticulous is certainly one of the words that I'd use to describe Judgment Day. And I'm really interested in the process that goes behind preparing for something like that has multiple time frames in the same physical location with the same actors, plus 2 Caitlins on a split screen and with a double, all that kind of stuff. That must have been one of the more complex shoots. What can you tell me about how you prepare for something like that?
Well, there was a lot of preparation for that one, and it was a moving target to some extent. We were figuring out as we went a little bit in terms of what was the future going to look like, because you could go so many different ways with that. And thankfully, we went a little bit more primitive, which helped us. So you don't have to create all this future tech, which I know a lot of, that's a tough thing to create, especially on a television timeline. To spend so much time. Well, what is it? Because things are already moving so quickly right now. Just looking at the Dome opening in Las Vegas this weekend, it's just like the technology is just beyond right now. But we just spent a lot of time trying to create what was HQ going to look like then, what would be happening, and that such beautiful stuff with it snowing in there. And so I had drawings made of what that could be from, what it would look like in there. So we did a bunch of preliminary drawings with our sketch team, and from there, then we had to once we had the scenes, I had to figure out how to shoot them, and we used motion control, which is something I used on Orphan Black when I did that show, because we had multiple characters, multiple of the same actor playing, different characters in the frame. This was much easier than doing 6 of them, say, that they have to do on Orphan Black. But it still requires, what we were lucky we found, we actually cast an actor to play Caitlin when she wasn't when she was acting opposite. So she wasn't just playing off nothing when it was, when it's in the split screen. So we cast a very, very good actor who actually looked very similar to her. It was very strange. There's some of her in the episode. You can see her when she runs out of the restaurant. That's actually the...
Well, now I've got to go back and watch. Thank you.
Yeah. So they were so similar. I was gonna change it out, and I was like, no, she looks perfect. So there's that little Easter egg there. But it was great to have an actual actor in that chair across from her, because sometimes, shows will cheap out a little bit. So it was nice that we spent the money and not have an actor there. So they're just basically acting to a sandbag or a tennis ball or something, but you're not getting anything back from the other actor. So that's what helped make that episode so special as well.
So I guess the question I have for that, maybe this is too technical, I don't know if you can explain how it works, but in the center of the frame, when you have those split screens, is Raymond, and he is reacting to both Caitlins. How do you do that where it just looks as seamless as it does? Because if he's holding someone's hand at the table who's not Caitlin, but it is Caitlin, or, I don't understand how you put them together.
Yeah, there's a little bit of VFX in there, but we also have motion control is like a moving split screen. So basically it's a robotic camera arm that moves and does the exact same move multiple times, as many times as you want, and it's exact. So you can actually just pull somebody out, and then you can put another person in, and they'll pass them, and then you can cut your seam right when it gets past their body, and it becomes a new part of the scene. So it's I don't know if that's explaining it well enough. It's kind of like a green screen a little bit, in that you can pull out the background a little bit.
Right. Let's put it this way. I understand it more now than I ever have. So it'd be great to see it in action.
Like
I think now I can somewhat envision it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's like a moving split screen is all it is. Yeah.
For all the Luddites out there.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say Chris and I are huge fans of Back to the Future, so it's to us it's like thinking about how they did a lot of those complex shots in Back to the Future too, but obviously with a couple of decades more of technological advancements. So
you read my mind, Matt. I was thinking of exactly
that. You were thinking the McFly family scenes.
Yes, and it is kind of just magic. Like a lot of the time, if you have a matching hair and you just are sort of half over someone's face, and Caitlin's there, if you're half over the double's face, you feel like your mind just wants that to be Caitlin. So you just see what we're telling you to see.
Okay, yeah. So maybe sometimes you're cheating it, but we don't notice, and our brains just
Exactly. It's a little bit of trickery. Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to start moving us towards season 2 now, because and particularly because I noticed you mentioned about, maybe you can't talk about this, I don't know, but I've got to ask. You mentioned about how going further into the future creates some problems because things move so fast, and how do you know what the future's going to look like? We have just seen an episode where we've discovered that the project is now 3 years in the future. Is this something that is going to be considered throughout the series? Because we're now in the near future, effectively. Is that going to change the look of the present day?
Yeah, well, you can see in the trailer a bit that people have a little bit of a different look this year, and I don't know how long we'll spend in the near future, the 3 years in the future, but suffice it to say, we'll spend some time there.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
I mean, as classic series fans, that near future time is perfect for us. It's very exciting.
We're hoping that we come back and everybody has like Al's outfits on and like the funky ties,
neon earrings,
the neon earrings, like the LED earrings, right?
And the Lego hand link comes back.
Right. We can dream, can't we? We can dream. Yeah. So. But so I mean, so you are the director for, I believe, Closure Encounters, which is episode 3. As you said, a lot of it showed up in the trailer that we got. And Matt, what was the year on that one?
Some late 40s, I think.
Late 40s, okay. But apparently about aliens. I mean, with a name like that, and
it's
then talking about Area 51.
Yeah, it's 1949 New Mexico, and it's Project Sign, which is it's sort of a Project Blue Book episode.
Okay, all right.
That you can see sort of in the trailer.
So, yeah, what we saw in the trailer was bits of what looked like a classic alien abduction going on, maybe. And I'm just wondering, without giving away too much of what's going to come in the next 2 weeks, were you influenced in your choices by shows like The X-Files and stuff like that? Because it looked like some of those kind of, the colours especially, and I know I'm talking about 5 seconds worth of footage from a trailer here, but
yeah,
was there...
It's what we do. It's a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's. I was definitely influenced, and I turned to those. Close Encounters is such a huge movie for me, in my childhood, and I loved how the lights from those things you can see in the trailer we sort of imitated as much as we could. But it was definitely that. I'm a huge X-Files fan, a huge Art Bell fan, anything sort of alien-like, which used to be science fiction, but I guess now it's just science. So declassified everything. But it was a lot of fun to tackle that investigation, and I think especially a science fiction audience is really going to like it.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm holding out hope that it's a sequel somehow to Starlight, Starbright, and maybe Sam will get a UFO.
Yeah. I always loved in the original series the episodes where you didn't quite know if everything had been explained. I kind of cherished. That's why I loved in Oh Ye of Little Faith as well. There's some moments you're like, I don't think that explains it. So
yeah,
I love those moments.
Oh yeah, we're still not convinced that the apparitions that Ben was seeing, even though he was drugged, were all Janus. There was something else going on there, some kind of boogeyman stuff going on there.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that stood out in the trailer, and I don't know if this is one of your episodes, so how much you can share, I'm not sure, but it looked like there's some location filming going on in Egypt, which, whether that was your episode or not, I guess would have been a
that
big
was my
deal.
episode. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, we went to Egypt.
What can you tell us about going to Egypt?
Well, I went there to scout on my own about a month before we shot. Got very sick. It was really one of the best shoots of my life. I shot a movie in Japan years ago, and That was a lot of fun, but this was it was chaotic and very satisfying, and I think we got to shoot in places that most people don't even get to go visit, because the government was sort of beside us at every turn, which was a blessing and a curse, you know. But it was really, really amazing. And we hired a local crew, and we brought our actors and wardrobe, hair and makeup, and AD and cinematographer, and just kind of went for it. And I think it's a really, really unique, satisfying episode.
If I may, I believe in the trailer Ben is walking in front of a pyramid. Were you guys on the Giza Plateau?
We were all over Giza and in front of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
And they offered for us they brought us down into catacombs, and do you want to shoot down here? Well, it seems like a lot more work down here in the catacombs, carrying cameras and, you know, but we shot in a lot of really interesting places. So.
Oh, that's cool.
So
I missed the catacomb tours when I was there, so they fill up real quick. You should have taken advantage of it.
Yeah.
It's so cool. A lot of those kind of shots that Chris is talking about these days seem to be happening in Mandalorian-style wall environments. So to actually go out there and do it, volume stages, and my first assumption was that it was that, and then I started hearing that it had actually been a location shoot. So that's. Was there ever any consideration of doing that back at home?
Oh yeah, there's consideration. You know, the great thing we have is, you know, Martin and Dean aren't big on just everything being VFX, especially, you know, if you have the Mandalorian's time, like, what do they have, like 25 years per episode, or I don't know what their time is, I'm not sure, but we don't have that kind of time. So our visual effects are going to end with, for something like that, are going to end with, I guess we have to air this, like, that's where it's going to end. It's not going to be like nailed it, you know. So and also Martin especially is really big on using special effects and miniatures and things from using all the tools that we have throughout the history of cinematic storytelling. And so it's really fun. We can go to real locations, we can use miniatures, we can use visual effects, you know. Just waiting for the all puppet episode, which I'm sure is coming.
I think it's really funny that you had mentioned earlier in the interview that technology is moving at such a fast pace. It's almost a nightmare scenario to create something like a plausible future. But here we are at a time when we all assumed that Ben was being green screened. The fact that you actually flew out to a location seems so impossibly quaint to me. And the fact that you're saying it's actually faster and easier to fly all the way to freaking Cairo to do one episode rather than get it done somehow with VFX on the lot it's fascinating to me.
Well, that's a huge process. Like, we're still, you know, the Directors Guild is trying to figure out creatively what it means for directors to be a part of that kind of shooting, because you do have to be a part of the shots months before you actually step onto the stage, because the sets are created, the camera movements are created for that set, you know, and so that happens all in the various visual effects houses before you step on stage, so you have to really be a part of it, and it's months beforehand that it requires. So we don't really have that time on a network television schedule.
We had discussed again the possibility. We don't know what the project's going to look like when we come back, but if we can maybe discuss the process that went into, if you know, of trying to bring maybe some feeling of the classic series to the new series. In this first episode, we got to see Addison being scanned in her Fermi suit, I guess so that she could be present in the imaging chamber for Ben when he was observing her. This is before everything happened with Martinez. So that's right there, a callback to the classic series. Are there other connective elements that you guys are conscious of that you try to bring in to keep the DNA of the original somewhat for the new series?
I see it materializing, and you'll see some of it materializing a little bit more in this season. But that's definitely a Martin and Dean question, because I know that Martin is especially wound up in how that sort of story is kept sort of sewn into what we're doing.
I see. Well, that gives me hope. Now I can't wait to see episode 2.
So on the topic of episode 2 then, maybe we can start to wrap up just by throwing forwards. We've got, as we understand it, at least another 7 episodes, maybe more depending on how things go with the strike. What can you tease the fans with for what we've got to look forward to for the next couple of months?
Well, I think this season we have, we've wrapped up the Martinez, Leaper X, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so what it's going to offer us is a chance to spend more time within the leaps themselves, which I really, really like. I loved an episode in O Ye of Little Faith when we could spend a lot of time in the leap with Ben. Mm-hmm. And I think this season especially has a lot bigger, sort of more emotional, more exciting leaps than even last season. And we go from, a bank robbery in 1978 to UFO investigation to Indiana Jones like hunt for atomic energy secrets. So and we go all the way to Egypt as well, like we mentioned. But I think it's a really satisfying season so far. We've made it all the way to the mid-season finale, and then we've got more to come from there.
So couldn't ask for more. Fabulous. Yeah. We are on the edge of our seats to see where this takes us, and we've certainly we loved episode 1.
Oh, wait till you hear the podcast, Chris. We gush over episode 1. We're ridiculous.
I'm excited. That was a good one. That one has miniatures in it. You should talk to Martin about that when you. Incredible to be a part of, because I've worked with miniatures before, but never to that extent. So it was very, very cool to see all these people who, experts in that field who maybe don't get as much work as they used to, come out and sort of lend their time and creativity to make this really, really amazing episode.
I know now all the fans listening are going to want to know which scenes in general were the miniature scenes.
The UFO, or the satellite installation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's like a mixture of live action and miniature, and it's just a lot of. Talk to Martin about it, but it was a lot of fun to be a part of.
It's weird.
A huge headache and a lot of fun.
It looked so real. I assumed it was CGI. That's basically where my head was going.
Sometimes that happens.
Great.
I've shot in New York and been standing on the rooftop. And we're all shooting on this roof, and I'm like, finally, I'm at a real rooftop. There's the Chrysler building, and then it looks like we're standing on a stage with a photo psych behind me.
Now I have to go back and see if that's just okay. That's a remote control Jeep crashing into a Lego tower.
No, that's a real Jeep. That's a real Jeep.
Okay, all right, good.
Yeah.
So wow, that's fascinating.
Well, Chris, you've been really generous with your time. As I say, I know at the moment we're on the start of a journey that's going to take us over at least the next couple of months. We're all so excited, and just thank you for being with us at the start of it.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.